Alright YouTube, it's time for a little bit of a rebuttal to Eternal Life Fan. Now, preface to this user made a video, link in the description, regarding my work No Lives Matter, basically attacking it from a transhumanist standpoint, the idea that, well, you can be eternal, you can get rid of the aging process, get rid of disease. You'll live forever, so this talk about No Lives Matter is nonsense.
Hello, Styx. So just to be perfectly clear, it's not that I'm claiming that I will live forever, it's just that I'm trying to live forever. I want to live forever. My claim is that it's possible to live forever because nobody knows what the future is, so nobody knows what kind of technology we're going to have. It's perfectly plausible and hypothetically possible that we could even invent some kind of technology or a solution to the death of the universe. The death of the universe, by the way, is also just a hypothesis. Nobody knows for sure that the death of the universe would even happen. So it's best to stay agnostic about the death of the universe. Yes, let's take steps to ensure the universe doesn't die as best we can. But of course we have a long time until we even have to worry about a possible hypothetical death of the universe. So in the meantime, let's focus on curing aging so we don't die. Aging is the single greatest threat to all of our lives.
Some people correctly interpreted the No Lives Matter bit as a bit tongue-in-cheek, and of course I point out towards the end of the video, I believe in reincarnation, so, you know, part of it is I don't really worry that much about dying. Now,
as far as being tongue-in-cheek, I don't really let people off the hook for being tongue-in-cheek if I think that their words are still going to have a negative impact and negative influence in the world, which I do think your video has, because you're basically saying no lives matter.
I've got my own opinion. No lives matter. We're all mortal. We're all going to die. Our physical bodies will pass away.
Now, some people might actually take that to heart, and they're going to think other people's lives don't matter, their own life doesn't matter. That could really have negative impacts in the world. When it boils down to it, it is kind of a suicidal message. You know, compare your message in that video to my message, which is that life is so important because we could possibly live forever. We should be striving to live forever, helping each other live forever. This is a much better message for the world. It's a better philosophy.
What should happen if this universe slams into another one, ripping them both apart? You will not survive that. It doesn't matter if you're immortal. It doesn't matter how durable you are. You will die. In the long span of existence, when you're talking about literally living potentially trillions of years, you will die. It will happen. It is inevitable.
Can't you see how fatalistic you're being? You've doubled down on your claim that I'm not going to live forever, and you're certain of it. In the same way that you've admitted that you're agnostic about reincarnation, you should apply that same agnosticism to the idea of eternal life. Why claim that death is certain? Why not be agnostic about it? Why not say, you know what, Rowan? You actually might live forever. I don't know. But instead, you keep on doubling down on your closed-minded idea that living forever is impossible. Because you have an assertion, an assumption that somehow, some way, the universe is certainly going to end. Therefore, it doesn't matter how much technology you invent, doesn't matter if you cure aging, you are definitely going to die from something. You don't know that. You don't know the future. Stop pretending to be some kind of sidekick.
I'll get into the coping mechanism argument that was trotted out in a bit. I think that's quite interesting because one could apply the same slightly patronizing label to transhumanism if they really wanted to. I have a feeling that you're not going to see it in your lifetime. Now, if it makes you hopeful, if that is your coping mechanism, to think that that will happen in your lifetime, go ahead, believe in this. I don't care. I have no problem with that. I don't have a problem if you proselytize transhumanism to others.
It is true that transhumanism could be used as a coping mechanism in the same way that I think you're using reincarnation as a coping mechanism. That is true. Maybe we do both have coping mechanisms. But the difference is, reincarnation is something with really no evidence. It's all just a big question mark. What happens after we die? Nobody knows. Therefore, possibly reincarnation. Yeah, that's true. We don't know. But with technology, it's a more physical, tangible, real thing that we can see. We can observe that technology continues to improve. And so if you follow this pattern of the improvement of technology, you extrapolate millions of years from now, you can see where I'm going with this. It's just like limitless potential. And this is something we can observe and test in the real world, whereas reincarnation is not. So if you're going to say my transhumanism is just a coping mechanism, yes, that could be. I might be grasping onto this idea because it's the only hope I have. It's my greatest hope. But doesn't mean that it's not valid. And I'm not saying that reincarnation is for sure wrong. Maybe there's a reincarnation. I just wouldn't count on it. I don't believe there is. I think it's bullcrap. I don't think there's really any evidence for it. And there's a lot more evidence that technology could actually allow us to stop the end of the universe and essentially live forever. If we can solve every possible accident that we might die from, if we can solve every possible threat that might kill us. Now, with reincarnation, you're basically throwing the dice on the table and just hoping for something, hoping and wishing, but there's really no basis for it.
I edit occult manuscripts for a living. I write occult work. I study the occult in depth. I have predominantly occult works behind me on that shelf for a reason. My understanding of these things is that there are forces that are beyond the physically observable. I'm agnostic on this. I don't claim to know it. I don't claim a gnosis regarding this subject. If that's the case, I literally do not have to care about my own mortality.
But if that isn't the case, then you'd be screwed, right? If you die and it turns out that everything is just physical, there is no spiritual, then just sucks for you. Which is why I would recommend being prepared for the worst case scenario. This is one thing I always try to do. Prepare for the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is that reincarnation isn't true. When you die, you will cease to exist forever. Therefore, try to live forever physically. Makes sense to me.
I do not disagree. Let me put this out there first and foremost. I don't disagree with the fact that human beings can defeat the aging process. I don't disagree with the fact that human beings can defeat potentially all diseases. Indeed, I believe we're making steady technological progress towards both. You can argue all day over whether that's a good idea or not. The transhumanists would say yes, some people would say no. I say I don't really care about this issue.
This is a problem, Styx. You believe in reincarnation, and that's a reason why you're not worried about dying. But reincarnation, you admitted you're agnostic about it. So there's a very big possibility that reincarnation isn't true. Therefore, why wouldn't you be worried about dying? So, when you die, it's very, 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 very likely that you will cease to exist forever. And I think we both agree that that would make our lives meaningless if that's the case. You should be afraid of death simply based upon the strong likelihood that death is non-existence. Living forever physically with transhumanist technologies could be the only way we're ever going to get our consciousness to exist forever. Which, from hearing you, sounds like you also want your consciousness to exist forever, right? You think your consciousness is going to exist forever through reincarnation. But I'm saying, don't put so much faith in that idea. Instead, why not focus more on this idea of living forever physically? This is the only life we have. This is the only life we know for sure exists. So if from a perspective of survival, it would make most sense to want to preserve this life forever and just never die. As opposed to, well, I'll just die and let's hope for a reincarnation. That is really, really not smart. If you wanted to, survive, if you wanted your consciousness to continue existing. And it sounds like you do want your consciousness to exist. This is why you are hopeful of reincarnation. You know, instead of telling your audience no lives matter, you could be going out there and saying, hey, people, let's try to cure aging. Let's cure all diseases. Why aren't you doing that? You have an apathetic attitude about this thing because you think, well, we're all going to die anyways. Because you have a fatalistic attitude. You think that even if we do cure aging, the death of the universe is still going to occur. But what I'm saying is that is an underlying assumption that you don't know. You don't know that humans couldn't actually solve this problem and live forever.
Okay, for this audience, which is a nice visionary audience, perhaps I should actually tell the real truth, which is that this whole 4-digit lifespan thing is completely conservative. One thing that's already come up in the discussion of risk aversion is that it's pretty much guaranteed that as we make progress against our number one cause of death as it currently stands, namely aging, we will care more about making progress against other causes of death. And, well, to just cut to the mathematical chase, the answer is that there is no actual half-life anymore. That the curve, radioactive decay curve, eventually, it's asymptotic to zero. Eventually, all the atoms decay, right? The curve that you get if you do this calculation is not asymptotic to zero anymore. Most people will live literally forever in this scenario.
And let me assume for a moment, and I have to assume because I don't believe this would be the case, but let us assume that transhumanism once installed, that is, people are now living for an indefinite amount of time because they're not aging, they're not getting diseases, and they're not being killed from falling off a building or whatever, or being shot. Let's assume it causes no social problems, no worldwide breakdown of order, no world war, no nuclear conflict, no civil war, no class war, no problems like that. You know, long time from now, if you're going to live forever. See, the problem is the transhumanist is still living a finite lifespan, so they're thinking, when they think of long term, they're thinking like the next 10,000 years or something. I'm thinking the next like 10,000 trillion years or something.
Transhumanists are actually among the most forward-thinking people in the world. We're thinking about 10,000 trillion years. We're thinking about long term, you know? And this is why we're excited about the idea of living forever. This is the exact reason most transhumanists are really into this idea of solving existential threats to our life. You know, things like asteroids hitting the planet, things like pandemics, things like a crazy scenario where artificial intelligence could take over and become evil and start killing everybody. Transhumanists are all concerned about this stuff, and this is very futuristic stuff. So we're thinking about the long term. We're thinking so long term that we're inspired about the idea of living forever. That's how long term we're thinking. So what I'm telling you is that when a transhumanist says that they believe they can live forever, what we're telling you is that not only do we think we can cure aging, we think we can figure out we have a long time to figure out this problem, okay? The heat death of the universe. We have a long time to figure this out. So it's not inconceivable that we could do it. And it's just about having an open imagination. Admitting that it's possible is the first step in actually solving these problems like the heat death of the universe. But you haven't gotten that far. You're not admitting that it's possible. You're stuck in this pattern of fatalism. Do I know the details as to how we're going to solve the heat death of the universe? You know, assuming that it would happen. Do I know how we're going to solve it? No. But we'll get there. It's about the idea that living forever is so important that we need to work for solutions and be optimistic about it rather than indulge in pessimistic thinking. You know, too much pessimistic thinking is counterproductive if you actually wanted to, if you actually wanted to try to live forever. You know, if you're too pessimistic about it, you're not going to be able to live forever because you're not going to be motivated to work on the problems.
And the idea of becoming a transhumanist society, but every once in a while somebody dies anyway because they get hit by an asteroid or something. That doesn't sound too fun.
Is this supposed to be an argument? The fact that some people will still die from freak accidents in a transhumanist society, it's still progress. It's better than the alternative. It's better than everyone being forced to die from aging. So I'm not sure what your point is here. And as time goes on, there will be less and less of these freak accidents because our technological ability to create a super ultra safe world will only increase.
Because the same scientists, and here's the real kicker, that the transhumanist would entrust with making them immortal, are also the same people that are telling you, yeah, the universe has a lifespan too. There's not a whole fucking lot that we can necessarily do about that.
Well, I can't speak for all the transhumanists out there, but I, for one, would not entrust my eternal life to some stupid scientist who is telling me that the universe is gonna die in a heat death, who would make such bold claims about the future when we really don't know. We have limited knowledge about this. Now, I don't mind if a scientist puts forth a theory about the heat death of the universe, but if a scientist says that it's inevitable, it's certain, there's nothing we can do about it, well, that's not smart at all. Okay, at this portion, I'd like to share a comment by one of my subscribers, Mark Gleason, because he had a rebuttal. You claim, what should happen if this universe slams into another one, whipping them both apart? You will not survive that. Michio Kaku, a theoretical physicist, states that the multiverse could have 11 dimensions. Different kinds of universes can form as a result of extra dimensions. Technology in trillions of years is likely to have the capability of detecting collisions of universes. Therefore, technology could allow you to escape to a universe that does not currently collide with another. Based on this, you cannot conclude that death is 100% certain, that there is no form of escape. That's very unscientific. Refute this argument. There is a huge difference between science itself and using science to support baseless assertions, making people think that you are scientific. So Mark put forth a very interesting theory here. So, this is all the kind of thing that is possible, hypothetically possible in the future.
What about the sex question? Are you still going to have sex? Are you going to sterilize everybody? Because, you don't need any more kids. And you can't necessarily populate other planets, so there's going to be an overcrowding problem if you don't. Well, I would say, yeah, that's okay, that's acceptable. You're either not having sex, that sounds kind of boring, honestly, or you're all sterile, so you can just, you can fuck around. There's no diseases, you can't get pregnant, so that's all fine. What happens if there is a calamity? Then you can't even repopulate. Well, that seems like it would be a little bit of a problem.
Well, I highly doubt that humanity would be so stupid to put themselves in that kind of situation where we sterilized ourselves and then we can't repopulate the planet. I don't think we would do that. There are other solutions. We could have temporary sterilization, with some kind of technology. I don't know how this technology would work, but I can foresee some kind of temporary sterilization if people want to do it, like a very advanced birth control that's very common and easy, accessible. And then you stop taking it, and then you can have children again. Very simple. But yeah, the gist of it is we would definitely have to limit the amount of children we're having. It's fine with me. I'm fine if there's no children at all in the world. It doesn't matter. As long as we get to live forever, that's what matters. And about the sex, yeah, I'm sure people are still going to be having sex. I'm pretty confident of that. We'll just have birth control, and way better than we have now. I always like to put forth this idea, that in the future, if people really want to have children, we can have virtual children in virtual reality. We don't need to actually have real children. If a parent wants to have a child, they could just have a virtual child instead of a real one. That way it wouldn't take up room, wouldn't take up resources. It'd be basically indistinguishable from a real person. That seems like a good idea to me. And the virtual technology is eventually going to get that good. It's eventually going to get there.
I think you are fearing death because you are intrinsically, probably atheistic, leaning towards believing that there's nothing thereafter, and then saying, well, you should fear it because then you can't have any fun for the rest of eternity.
That's exactly right. I don't want to die and never have fun ever again. That sucks. I mean, doesn't that just freaking suck? What is worse than that? Just think about this. Never getting to experience anything ever again. No beauty, no fun, no relationships. You know, I could never watch any more Devin Tracy videos. Atheism is unstoppable. So yeah, I fear death, and I fear the Rue. I know I called you a loser, Styx, but you don't have to be a loser. Because you're still alive, and you can live forever, potentially. And if you do live forever, you'd be a winner. That's how you be a winner in this world, is you live forever. And if you're counting on some reincarnation to give yourself eternal life, that's not a good bet. You should be betting on physical, living forever physically. This is what I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to help you.
For the last untold billions of years, as far as my consciousness is aware, I didn't exist before I was born. Didn't seem too bad to me because I don't recollect anything about it. And if I'm not recollecting anything, if I'm not conscious, there's also no pain.
So freaking what? The negative of death far outweighs any positive of not having pain. The negative being you can't experience anything. Just this is the way I think about it, is just that I would much rather live forever with lots of suffering than to not get to exist at all. That's the way I think about it. Because life is just freaking incredible. Like, look around you. Like, YouTube. Look what we're doing right now. This is incredible. This is life. I don't want this to end. Never. So yeah, death would be, okay, I'm a physicalist, so I believe all my consciousness is held inside my physical brain, and if I died, it would be like before I was born. But that to me is not a good thing, and that's not a consolation at all. That is horrible. I'm alive now. I've tasted the beauty of life, you know, and to have it all end is an epic tragedy. A tragedy beyond description. It's such a nightmare. And I want people like you to acknowledge this horrible, horrible, horrible thing of death and stop trying to sugarcoat it. I think this is a tragedy. I think that death is the greatest tragedy that ever was and ever will be. There's nothing worse than death. I don't think there's anything worse that can happen to a human being than being dead. And it's sad, you know, to look at all these people. They all had lives, they all had, you know, they all had a life, and they had people they loved, and they had relationships, and they're all dead. It's all gone forever. Death robs everything you have. Death is the destroyer of everything that's good in life. It destroys life itself.
There's no suffering. I won't care because I won't be there. You're boiling consciousness, human consciousness. You're boiling it down to the materialistic and the overtly physical. Now that's fine, but at the same time you're then saying, well, life matters for some grand reason. Why?
You're seriously asking me why life matters. I guess I should find this no surprise coming from someone who had the video called No Lives Matter. See, this is precisely my point. You are undervaluing and underappreciating life. Look, the grand reason why life matters, it's not a mystery at all. I just described it. It's that it's beautiful. Life is beautiful. Have you ever seen the movie American Beauty? One of my favorite movies. This movie, Kevin Spacey, he plays this character where he finds this intense joy of life. He breaks out of his shell. He starts really, really appreciating life and loving it. And this is what I'm talking about. The beauty of being alive in America. This is what we could have forever.
You're basically equating the human consciousness to nothing more than the functions of a computer. So why would you care about preserving your life or anybody else's life? Just for your own enjoyment.
It's also for their enjoyment, too. As far as consciousness being like a computer, yes, a very, very, very advanced computer. That somehow our brains mysteriously give us consciousness, and maybe we don't quite understand consciousness, but that's good enough for me, and I don't see any reason to invoke any spiritual, non-materialistic reason for consciousness. The brain pretty much explains it, in my opinion.
Well, again, the future that you're talking about, how do you have any realm of certainty that it will be an enjoyable future? What if you regret this?
None of us have any certainty that the future is going to be enjoyable. I mean, I could use the same argument back at you and say, well, how do you know tomorrow's going to be enjoyable? What if you regret not killing yourself today? Because you might experience some horrible suffering tomorrow. The bottom line is that people want to continue living because we enjoy the adventure of being alive. We'll take the suffering with the pleasure because it's much better than not existing at all. That's why most people don't just kill themselves. We want to be alive. We have a drive to survive.
What if it drives you insane?
Even if that was the case, I would rather be alive and insane than to be dead and not exist at all.
You're not even addressing the problem potentially of what happens when the brain continues to store memories over time. Do you slowly lose? This is a question that you have to answer, and this is not an absurd claim. This is something, if you're looking at the brain as simply a physical thing, basically just a computer, what happens when it runs out of memory? Does it begin to delete the old data so that you slowly lose track of even who you are? So that you have to keep reminding yourself, you have to have like a schedule of reminders, oh, this is who I am, this is what I enjoy, this is what I hate. Because otherwise your brain will just keep deleting that info until you're wandering around one day and don't know what's going on, don't know who you are.
Well, I'm not exactly sure how the brain would cope with long amounts of time as far as what would happen with our memories. These are obviously things that we're going to have to try to figure out. These are problems. I don't have all the solutions, but that does not detract from what I'm saying, that living forever is still better than the alternative, which is the absolute worst thing that could ever happen, which is death.
And there is only one thing we say to death. Not today.
Here's one possible solution, is an enhanced augmented brain with some kind of a cyborg implants that could store extra memories. Things like that. I'm open to that. I'm into biological immortality. I'm not really into this idea of transforming myself into a robot because I'm worried that I would lose my consciousness in that process. But I'm open to some kind of cyborg enhancements that could somehow interface with my brain, possibly giving me extra storage space for more memories, things like that. And I do believe that kind of thing is possible. As time goes on, we will have that kind of technology. But I must restate that however this turns out, whatever hypothetical problems we can come up with, it's still better to survive into the future and see and take the problems as they come than to die. If you're dead, you can't have anything. There's no chance of success if you're dead.
I don't quite get this. You're saying that, well, this is a bad philosopher because he should understand that reincarnation, it's subjective. Why would the human experience be objective then? Why you haven't determined why that should be the case? Why is your specific ego driven? And I don't mean that in a ego as in bad thing. I mean ego as in self. Why would that be an objective witnessing of everything around you? What if solipsism is really true? What if I'm the only being that even exists and you're just an automaton? What if you're the only being that actually has volition and true sentience and I'm just a robot?
You could be a robot. I admit that's a possibility. I could be a robot. And I might not even know it, right? I have no idea. We don't know for sure. What if? Okay, I agree. All of these things are possible. But from my perspective, all I have to go on is that I do have a consciousness, that I'm a real person. I think, therefore I am. And that death is a horrible, scary unknown, which very likely results in the end of my consciousness. So therefore I have just one choice to make here, and that's to try to live forever. I mean, you can ask what ifs all day long, and I agree, they're possible. I'm agnostic in regards to all of these things. But that agnosticism is the very reason why we should be trying to hold on to this life. Because in all appearance, this is the life that's real. Whether you want to say that's objective or subjective, it doesn't really matter to me. Whether my ego-driven consciousness is subjective or objective, it does not change the fact that we should be trying to avoid death at all costs.
In the long span of existence, when you're talking about literally living potentially trillions of years, you will die. It will happen. It is inevitable. You are a mortal life form. You can take care of the problem of the fact that our own biological systems are degraded over time, both internally and by their exterior sort of surroundings. You know, there's a reason why somebody who lives in smog-filled Beijing may not live as long as somebody living out in the nice, clean, alpine wilderness harvesting their organic turnips. Yeah, that makes sense to me. But it doesn't really matter in the long run. And I'm talking about the long run to an immortal being. You'll die anyway. And yes, I am certain of that.
And that, my friends, is why Styxhexenhammer666 is a bad philosopher. Because he's insisting on being certain of something that no one can be certain of. Some people who are alive right now on this planet, some of us might live forever. One of those people who live forever might be me. Keep your mind wide open to all the possibilities. Okay? All the possibilities. One of those possibilities is eternal life, living forever physically. This is what I was talking about in the first video when I said that he lost his muchness. The Mad Hatter talks about this idea of muchness. And that idea has to do with your childlike imagination, like being open to possibilities. And Styx is not. He's closed to this possibility of living forever physically. I'm sure he's open to a lot of other possibilities, but this one, for whatever reason, he is closed-minded to it. He's acting like death is as certain as 1 + 1 = 2. I get it. People have died. It looks like that's what's going to happen to everyone. I get it. On the surface, that's what it looks like. But sometimes things aren't always as they seem. Especially when it comes to the future. The future is an unknown. It's a question mark. We could have a major breakthrough tomorrow that cures our aging. I know Styx is open to this idea that aging can be cured, but he is not yet open to the idea of living forever because he is just assuming that there will be some inevitable death of the universe that will destroy us all. Some horrible catastrophe, and we're all dead. But that also is an assumption. You cannot predict that sort of thing with certainty. And he's not accounting for the possibility that the humanity of the future could find some way to prevent this death of the universe.
It's going to happen. We can observe. We have to observe. We can't just use conjecture based on no observation when we're talking about something that has to do with physical mortality.
Well, unfortunately, we can't observe someone living forever because forever never ends. You know, so, but that doesn't mean you can't live forever. See what I'm saying?
I'm not talking about an abstract concept of, well, why are we here? What is the soul? What is consciousness? I'm just talking about your biological form, as in your actual physical body. It's going to get ripped apart. This universe clashes with another. It experiences heat death.
All right. At this point, I want to share 2 quotes because I think they'll kind of make my argument for me. This one's by Sam Harris. It's not so much religion per se. It's false certainty that worries me. And religion just has more than its fair share of false certainty or dogmatism. I'm really concerned when I see people pretending to know things they clearly cannot know. I think this is the situation that Styx is in. He is pretending to know that the death of the universe is inevitable. Here's another quote by Mark Twain. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. You see, because Styx is so sure that he can't live forever physically, in his world that's just an impossibility, having such a pessimistic, fatalistic attitude is what would create a self-fulfilling prophecy. You see, because he doesn't think it's possible, he's not going to work to achieve living forever physically. Why? Why would you work to achieve something you don't even think is possible? This is why it's so important to keep your mind open to all the possibilities and not pretend to know things you don't know. Because when you pretend to know something you don't know, you're closing yourself off to what's possible. And you're setting yourself up for failure.
You'll die anyway. And yes, I am certain of that.
A good philosopher has a pure imagination. It's like the movie Willy Wonka. Okay, he talked about a pure imagination. It's like the ability to imagine anything and be open to all those possibilities. Find the possibility that you want to come true and work to make it happen.
If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Want to change the world, there's nothing to it.
But if you're so closed-minded that you cannot find the possibility because you think it's impossible, that's not gonna work out well for you.
Indeed, there are only 2 possibilities. You can boil that down to a binary system. That's very nitty-gritty mathematics. You can boil that down to a dichotomy. That's very difficult in most cases to actually do. Either the universe is singular, in which case it will experience heat death.
But what about the possibility that humanity could figure out some way to escape that universe into a different universe, the theory that Mark Gleason put forward, or figure out, some kind of technology that could solve the problem? It's a long ways away. We don't know exactly how it's going to happen. We don't know if there's a way to prevent it. See what I'm saying? There are other possibilities that Styx is not understanding.
It will continue to expand or maybe contract. If the big crunch theory is true, you'll get compressed into that same little pea-sized blob of red-hot existence. If not, everything will just fly off, sort of in every direction continuously. It will continue to lose speed. It will continue to lose energy. You will die. You'll freeze solid at some point. There's not much you can do about that, unfortunately. Or it's one of many, in which case it might still undergo heat death, or it might still undergo a big crunch. We're not exactly sure. The other possibility it brings in is it collides with another universe, sending your universe into oblivion. It rips it to shreds.
Styx is very good at figuring out fatalistic, pessimistic possibilities. I'll grant you, those are all possible. But why not use your imagination to consider some of the alternative, positive possibilities? Possibilities that we could actually escape the death of the universe and live forever. Why not consider those things?
What I'm doing here, what I'm saying on this video may not even matter. And if it does matter, good. But that doesn't mean that I'm interested in being a guinea pig. and testing out immortality, living 10,000 years, maybe go completely nuts, maybe kill myself. The only certainty it would seem to me would be that that would ensure eventually, whether it's the next day or 10,000 years later, a traumatic death. Well, maybe I don't want a traumatic death. Maybe I just want to die in my sleep as my heart slowly stops.
Okay, all this stuff you just said there, Styx, this all further confirms my original suspicion that you have a weak survival instinct. Okay, someone with a strong, powerful will to survive would not have said that. No, they would be struggling for life. They would be struggling for survival at all costs. And you said that testing out immortality would be like being a guinea pig. Well, if you want to talk about being a guinea pig, I think death is being the guinea pig. Dying and hoping that there's reincarnation, that is the true guinea pig experiment. So if you were concerned with survival, you would be holding on to this life, for dear life. Holding on to this life, doing everything possible to extend your life as long as possible, hoping that some way humanity could figure out the solution for the end of the universe, and literally we could live forever physically. Not to be hoping for some... Look, it's fine to hope for reincarnation. It's even fine to wish for reincarnation. But if you were truly wise, you would not let reincarnation take the place of trying to live forever physically. You should try to live forever physically, and then if something should go wrong, fine, hope for reincarnation. But first, the priority should be trying to live forever physically. Because this is the only life that we know exists.
Seems a little bit more peaceful. Either way, I will die. It will happen. If you want to believe otherwise, you can feel free to believe otherwise. If you want to preserve your cognitive functions for the next 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 years, be my guest.
No, I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in living forever. Because I'll be honest, if I only live to 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years, that's meaningless to me. So I'm going to try to live forever. 100,000 years, that's a bridge to get me to forever. So, I want to live to 100,000 years, but I don't want it to end there. I got to live forever. That's the only thing that makes life truly meaningful. If I don't live forever, I will be the first to admit that I would be a loser. And just like you will be a loser if you don't live forever. Just like everyone in the world is a loser if our life eventually comes to an end. Well, I think that's all I wanted to say in this response video. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on what I had to say.